So in the subcontinent where I hail from, during a century and a half of colonial ascendancy and deliberate denigration of the colony's own diverse architecture and cultural traditions, alien architectural vocabulary was utilized to convey different phases of the empire's preeminence and dominance of vanquished territories. At inception, to express the military might, not surprisingly, it was European classical orders replete with arcades and pediments that were utilized by Company Bahadur as East India Company was known. After the First War of Independence in 1857, when British Queen Victoria assumed the title of Empress of India, Gothic revival or Indo-Gothic style was imposed by arriving British administrators. Now, everyone came as a Christian soldier, wishing to inculcate Christian values among natives, regardless of their faith. Towards late 19th century, once independence movements had taken root, it was Anglo-Mughal edifices, incorporating a concoction of Mughal imagery of 16th century that were built to express ruling power's paternalistic phase, a culturally benevolent posture in an attempt to put down mounting resentment among native populations who were vociferously demanding self-rule and agitating against drain of wealth from the colony. It still took a world war and another half a century for Pakistan and India to gain sovereignty in 1947. All through, it was designers and later highly qualified architects such as associates of Royal Institute of British Architects who acted as interpreters for the exigencies of the ruling power. As we know, during the age of colonies, wealth that had been brought back to home countries spurred the Industrial Revolution and ensuing prosperity when spectacular palace-like mansions were erected in mother countries, which also strengthened the system of commissioning architects. But today, we stand at crossroads. As I have said in my manifesto to the Zine magazine, today we live in an era that is beset with fragmentation and disruptions. It is a world ravaged by rising poverty levels and increasing disparities, depletion of the Earth's resources, and climate change impact, along with COVID-19 imperatives. In a new world order, how can we continue to design for the privileged 1% who have acquired the most wealth, as highlighted by French economist Thomas Piketty? And we really need to reflect on this particular issue. How do we just get involved in working for the wealthy? Global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, recurring disasters, climate emergencies, and climate migrants, conflict-impelled refugees, the displaced and the homeless everywhere, all require innovative design solutions. Under such challenging circumstances, when many countries in the world will be unable to meet UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as they are known, it is the power of design that is in demand for serving the other 99%. Remember, it is not only the privileged who have a right to enjoy well-designed environments. The disadvantaged and those who live on the margins need more, not less design to achieve a better quality of life. I believe the time has come when we must develop a framework for a changed direction in architecture. We need to do away with the prevalent colonial mindset and relinquish the desire to create imposing mega structures, which have traditionally been commissioned by the likes of the Medicis of Florence, robber barons of East India Company, merchant princes of Industrial Revolution, and present days exploitative multinationals that promote actually high carbon methodologies. We're all aware of the damage caused by the colonial mindset to the Earth's ecosystem due to wasteful and highly consumptive ways of living and building. We also know that it is in the global north where the capitalist system has encouraged excessive exploitation of Earth's resources. And so I believe that together we must urgently implement corrective measures. Where we need to find ways to deal with social injustices in the global south. Equally, we have to combat what I call ecological injustices and eco-bigotry that is prevalent in the global north. So let me try to see if I can start my presentation. How do I do it now? Just a moment. Sorry, is that, can you see it all now? Okay. And why have I got it right in the middle of it? Okay. So if we wish to reverse the tide and save the planet from further misuse, I suggest that we need to seek solutions found in countries in the global south, such as Pakistan, which has rich traditions based on a diversity of tangible and intangible heritage. Solutions that are based on local wisdom and vernacular techniques to fashion an equitable world, which is driven by both social and ecological justice. So a little bit about Heritage Foundation of Pakistan. It is, as you can see, it was co-founded by my late husband, Suhail Zahir Lari, an eminent historian and author, due to which I could be engaged with heritage safeguarding and conservation from 1980 onwards. At the same time, my work with heritage and vernacular traditions helped me to devise strategies for the poorest of the poor. On the left, you see the amazing 16th century tomb of Sultan Ibrahim that Heritage Foundation has conserved at Makli World Heritage Site.
Apologies, Yasmeen. You might need to share your screen again because we can't see the slides.
Oh, you can't. Okay. Maybe I should. Shall I exit and come back? Maybe that would help. Do you think?
If you just go on the main window of the Zoom and you try clicking on share screen again, hopefully it should work.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I restart. Okay then. Is that better?
Perfect. We can see it.
Oh, great. Okay. Do I need to enlarge it in some way or maximize it? Or is that fine now? Great.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So Makli necropolis is the largest Muslim necropolis in the world, and where monuments present 400 years of diverse styles of architecture. And really, all of you must come and see it sometime. Must come to Pakistan. On the right is a reconstructed zero carbon earth masonry structure, one of thousands of structures that we've helped to build after countrywide floods in 2010. And as you can see, it's a not-for-profit social and cultural entrepreneur organization established for safeguarding Pakistan's cultural heritage. But since 2005, it provides humanitarian assistance by linking heritage for innovative, socially and ecologically led initiatives. For us, both these are very important. Now, I just wanted to again share with you the diversity that we have in Pakistan in terms of heritage. So Pakistan is custodian of this amazing heritage ranging from a rich collection of tangible heritage that begins with Bronze Age Mohenjo-daro and Mehergarh, Hindu, Buddhist, and Sikh monuments during the centuries preceding 14th century of Sultanate period, such as what's happened in Makli, and then 16th century Mughal palaces, forts, and paradisal gardens, and then, of course, the British colonial period of 19th and early 20th century, all lending a diversity to our cultural legacy that is not found in many countries. There's very, very few that can boast of this. And then, of course, we have the intangible heritage, Sufi traditions and spiritualism, folklore, folk traditions, oral history, and diverse crafts, many still being practiced by rural women that have been passed on to them from generation to generation and from mother to mother, actually. And then there's a vernacular heritage, from where I have learned the use of sustainable materials, local sourcing, ease of handling, economical in use, and one that is based on age-old local wisdoms. Oops. Sorry, I don't know how to put it back. So just as you have in many parts of Europe and in UK, some wonderful medieval towns, in Pakistan, we have amazing walled cities. And so from which I continue to draw inspiration for devising affordable, sustainable, eco-driven, and carbon-neutral alternatives. Now, I began to visit actually Pakistan's walled cities very late. That was in the early 1960s when I came back after having graduated as an architect. And accompanied by my late husband, Suhail Zahir Lari, an Oxonian, who was a historian and an avid photographer, these visits helped me to understand my roots. And, this organic morphology and the stacking of multi-story houses in our historic towns, I found really fascinating because I had not been familiar with that before when I had lived in Pakistan. So it is really something very, very new for me, and it's amazingly exciting. And so this is really the walled city of Lahore, very famous, and you can see the model of the 3D model of the town, of the walled city, with the palace buildings in this, I think it's really should be the north, but I don't know, I think it's upside down, but anyhow. So then, and you can also see this particular artist rendering of what the streets are, and so on. And you can see organic morphology, pedestrian streets, low-rise, medium-density development, BICS 24-hour cycle, zero or low energy natural cooling, passive solar design, courtyard planning, subterranean chambers, water mass cooling, and semi-public spaces for interaction of people who live there. And so really, this is the kind of traditional sustainable architecture and urbanism that we should all be looking for. And I certainly myself has learned a lot from all this. So, what I learned from Lahore Walled City, for instance, I was able to apply in designing Anguri Bagh social housing with open to sky terraces during the early 1970s. And so many of the urbanism principles found here, I'm applying in the walking street implemented in Karachi's historic core that are drawn from Pakistan's traditional urbanism. And I thought I'll just share with you this particular slides from Thatta. This is in 1979 that we documented the historic town of Thatta. And it has these distinctive wind catchers, as you can see, and beautiful lime stabilized walls, mud plastered walls, where the air and as you can see, the wind catchers actually bring the air down into the buildings and make it really cool. So from the study of these houses, I learned to utilize Karachi's prevailing breeze for natural cooling in connecting walkways in multi-story finance and trade center in Karachi in the early 1980s. And then you can see the graphic, how the wind is brought in and scooped into this funnel and the funnel into the interior. And this is how wind energy actually works. And this is zero energy microclimate being created. And then here on the right is, it's really the introverted courtyard or atrium for natural cooling. This is a unique mansion in Peshawar, embellished with a variety of building crafts, which I had the opportunity to conserve. And the courtyard configuration, you can see how, in the graphics, you can see how the cool air drops down and keeps in, at night, it keeps it very cool and takes a long time before the air in the daytime starts to get warmed up. So these are all ways by which natural ventilation, natural light, and all kinds of means have been utilized to be able to have comfortable microclimate within buildings. And it is from examples such as these from which I understood the value of age-old wisdom and traditional techniques for providing buildings of great comfort without using energy. And then again, if you look at this, this is the Lahore Fort. In the early 2000s, on behalf of UNESCO, I had the privilege to co-author a master plan for World Heritage Lahore Fort. And this is Mughal Lahore, where you can see the expanse of water. Of course, this is Shalimar Gardens, but even within the fort itself also, they have ponds and fountains and so on, so that it helps to cool the air within these buildings. And these are amazing traditional ways of dealing with providing comfortable living for people. And then I thought I should also share with you the challenges that we face. So although we are custodian of extremely rich and diverse heritage, Pakistan faces enormous social and environmental challenges, as its poverty levels have risen to over 50%, composed of those who live below the poverty line. And the majority, particularly women and children, continue to suffer from a multiple of deficits due to a lack of social and physical infrastructure. Poor healthcare, low literacy levels, lack of access to safe disaster resilient shelters and potable water supply, inadequate sanitation arrangements, and really hardly much of clean cooking arrangements. And then there's, of course, this energy poverty. So it is ironic that although I belong to a low-income economy and industrially developing world, only after I had brought to a close my career as a star architect for 36 years, it was recurring disasters in Pakistan from 2005 that forced my attention towards the vast marginalized sections in my own country. So as a practicing architect, barring a few projects such as Anguri Bagh, to social housing in Lahore, or mud barracks in Bahawalpur, or low-rise, dense self-built housing, a land-sharing mechanism devised for informal settlements of Lions area in Karachi, I had indulged in an extravagant, egotistic journey, which largely focused on serving the elite of my country. And some of you might be familiar with this particular image. It's the slide of Pearso House. This building I designed in early 1980s for the largest oil company of Pakistan, listed in Fortune 500, with extravagant use of cement and steel, reflected glass and aluminum. But once I became aware of the reality, it was no longer possible for me to ignore the change in mindset that was needed. There are estimated to be over 3 billion people around the world who require shelter and other basic facilities for survival, just for survival. This vast population remains underserved or unserved today. Most of these, of course, belong to South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, but now there's homelessness almost everywhere in the world. Thus, I believe that democratization of architecture and utilizing participatory approaches using locally sourced materials have become paramount for us. To deal with the challenges confronting us today, all nations, including the industrialized world, equally need to be conscious of the cost that has to be paid to sustain prevalent modes of living and building, which result in fast depletion of planet's resources. This economist, Dr. Howard Frederick, who reminds us that, and I quote, since the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, many business entrepreneurs around the world have simply plundered and exploited the environment in ignorance without any thought of sustainability, unquote. Confronted with recurring disasters of floods and earthquakes, Pakistan is the 5th most vulnerable country. Being engaged in humanitarian work since a 2005 countrywide devastating earthquake, I felt compelled to seek inspiration from cultural heritage and vernacular traditions in order to work out low-cost, sustainable methodologies that resonate with the aspirations of marginalized communities in my country. For me, it had to be by disposing of my rather inflated ego. I had been able to regularly interact with poverty-stricken populations that has enabled me to explore their age-old practices. Through this process, I have understood that design cannot be a standalone activity. It must be underpinned by considerations of social impact and ecological sustainability. So barefoot in Pakistan at Makli, actually, because of widespread deficits and deprivations, particularly among women, for me, the pursuit for justice has been paramount. And the reason why I decided to design a stratagem called Barefoot Social Architecture, or BAZA, for the disadvantaged, this was the reason why I did it. I felt empathy with those who walked barefoot and had become my fellow travelers. While the notion of being barefoot may be strange for many living in more affluent societies such as yourselves, for me, barefoot is a common sight in our rural areas. It demonstrates the harshness of life, but it also has benefits. You are able to tread softly on earth and grow up using planet's resources with care. It reminds us that all of us have to learn to use the earth's resources judiciously. So, Barefoot Social Architecture, BAZA, for social and ecological justice. So what is BAZA? Some of you have probably heard of it and might have even read about it. So BAZA is akin to social engineering for bringing about social change, incorporating environmental, cultural, and technical dimensions, resulting in a transformation of mindset from a cycle of dependency to a culture of pride and self-reliance. On the one hand, BAZA seeks to democratize architecture that provides people with well-being and self-esteem. On the other, it unashamedly promotes zero carbon footprint structures using ubiquitous earth, a conservative magic lime, and renewable bamboo. While working with marginalized communities, I have stumbled upon numerous design opportunities unclaimed before in the pursuit of fulfilling the exigencies of social and ecological well-being of people. Recently, when Cliff Pryor of an International Impact Fund declared at COP26 in Glasgow, and I quote, "Tangible sense of social justice is key to net zero transition," unquote. I felt vindicated in my view that I have advocated for several years past now to give priority to social justice values, adoption of which would provide incomparable ecological gains as well. So on the one hand, the task seems daunting. On the other, it opens up untold prospects to build built environment professionals, architects, engineers, and planners to create design alternatives for fulfilling the needs of the planet, as well as emergent requirements of those living on the margins. So here's a slide about BAZA impact. You can see the benefits accrued in implementation of BAZA, which we're able to provide through which assistance to 2.84 million people, which is over 100,000 persons per year, through our zero carbon rights-based development. It aims to achieve 12 out of 17 sustainable development goals, or SDGs, at an extremely low cost. And so I thought I'll share with you the tenets of barefoot social architecture. And you might know that it relies on 4 tenets. Maximizing the potential of existing barefoot ecosystem by applying 3 zeros: zero cost to donors, zero carbon, and zero waste, methodologies which will lead to zero poverty. Secondly, focus on social and ecological justice through humanistic architecture, fostering pride, dignity, and well-being, and preventing depletion of the planet's resources. Thirdly, delivery of unmet needs. There's so many needs of poor people that are never taken care of. Nobody bothers about them. And those are little things that can, if somebody was to provide them, they can even afford to get them. But it has to be affordable. It has to be good quality. So that's why we established something called Barefoot Incubator for social good and environmental sustainability, for training in self-building, co-building, and affordable products for unmet needs of BOP, which is bottom of the pyramid. And then fourthly, non-engineered structures for shrinking ecological footprint using green skills and sustainable locally sourced materials. So working with marginalized communities in the last years has allowed me to adopt a bottoms-up approach, encouraging efficient use of funds and resources, rights-based development, knowledge sharing through training, and guidance for cost-effective output. Sometimes that's all we need to do, is to share the knowledge that we have for people to live a better life. And this in turn has stimulated the barefoot ecosystem in order to foster a life of reasonable fulfillment through an enabling process of serving and sharing with the other disadvantaged populace. So if you train people, if you train the poor in any kind of products that can be made which are affordable and again, something that can be done easily with locally sourced materials, then that means that they can market it to the other poor. And so suddenly you see people having a better quality of life, even with smallest of these items. So Baza tenet number 1 is maximizing barefoot ecosystem. So among the reasons for Baza outreach have been the maximization of this barefoot ecosystem, which mostly economists and everybody has ignored. They've just ignored that there's a vast majority of populations actually is poor, and that there's a huge market that if you were to cater to it, there will be so many millionaires that should be emerging out of it, because sometimes it's as much as as many as 90% of the population. So just to see what are the segments of the barefoot ecosystem. First is barefoot economy, again, barefoot market, untapped markets for services, barefoot enterprises, services and products, barefoot entrepreneurs, then there's barefoot skills, and then also there are barefoot products. And this is really something that you can, all these particular items can actually be worked out. And this is just a slide to show graphically what are the various aspects and how they all contribute to a barefoot ecosystem. If we were to recognize it and maximize it, then you can, at a very low cost, you can reach out to a very large number of people. So in order to create this zero carbon humanistic architecture fostering pride, dignity, and well-being, I follow 2 gurus. And of course, the first one is Earth Guru Hassan Fatehi. I'm sure many of you must have heard of him. And if you have not, then I suggest you should really study him because really he's the one who wrote, about a century ago, he wrote architecture for, architecture for the poor. And he's the one who taught me the value of engaging them with them to unleash their creativity. And then, of course, the second guru that I have is the 1st century BC Roman architect that you all must know about, Marcus Vitruvius. And from him, I've learned the use of lime, as well as the importance of air, water, earth, and fire, 4 elements, the alchemy of which leads us to democratic norms and behavior. So he's somebody that I think is worth studying. And then I just wanted to share with you that, my palette consists of only 3 materials today, and they're all zero carbon. And these are, as you can see, earth and lime and bamboo. And you can see the qualities in them. I mean, they're all biodegradable. You can see that they hardly emit any carbon. And if there's any carbon that's emitted, is also absorbed, particularly lime does that, and also bamboo. And of course, earth is something that is so amazing to use. So these are all that I use today. I've not used any cement, I think, for the last 21 years, ever since I gave up my practice. So it's always now lime that I use. And that's because my work has been with conservation, and I've learned the use of lime when I was working with these heritage buildings. So now we have the Baza tenet number 2, which is focused on social and ecological justice through humanistic architecture. So I thought I'll just show you some examples of it. This is learning from tradition, a kind of a new vernacular. This is a structure that survived the 2010 earthquake, which was very, very severe. And then this is my interpretation of how we can use those techniques and materials today. This is earth masonry walls and thatched roof, which is really very well ventilated because the air just moves, and it really is just amazingly comfortable. So this is what I'm trying to do, is to learn wherever I can from what has been done before. And then this I call improved vernacular, which is again a cross bracing. This is a building that survived the earthquake of 2005, which is extremely severe. I think it was 7.6 Richter scale. And as you can see, there was this cross bracing, which is called dhiji, in wood. And so what we did was I've used bamboo instead in the cross bracing, and it's really created so many of the resilient structures that I have built. And it's a very low cost. And then, you know, it just, it provides you any kind of possibility of filling with whatever material is easily available. So this is something that I've used now quite a lot to create very strong and resilient structures. This is the basis of the log, which is Lari octogreen that students have been working on in several universities in Pakistan, and students and faculty members of Politecnico di Milano recently did a remarkable job in building scale models of the bamboo log. And we are going to hoping to take it forward in other countries as well. And I'll talk about it later. And then of course there is this women's center in an area which is constantly flooded. This is inundated, this area, every year with water. And it's all again just bamboo, and the stilts provide the, you know, possibility of refuge at the time of flooding. And this is served very well since 2011. The first one was built, and it's done extremely well. This is actually Al Jazeera animation that we did when they did a documentary on my work. And then I thought now we go on to Baza tenet number 3, which is the delivery of unmet needs. And this is an economist called Max Neef, who's the only one I found who talks about a barefoot economy, or who talks about how do you reach out to poor by catering to their unmet needs. And this is something important, because a lot of times we train people, but maybe not in production of items that will be useful for them, but something that everybody feels they should be selling to the more affluent places like urban areas or even abroad. And I think that's what's important for us to understand, that we need to have to produce or provide skills to people for whatever they can provide as a service to people around them, and not necessarily to be taken abroad or outside. So, sorry. And then these are the primary needs. You can see the zero carbon safe one-room house. On the left, this is basic structure of a bamboo frame panel, and then a prefab panel actually, and then covered with mud and lime and so on, and then beautifully decorated. And then something like, you know, it's really 1/4 or 1/5 of the cost that you normally have to pay for a structure of this kind. And this, of course, is our earthen Pakistan Chula stove, which has won this World Habitat Award. And it's, you know, really transformed lives of thousands of women. And then here, I just thought we'll show you, this is in a conference in 2019 at Muckley, where the executive director of World Habitat actually presented the trophy to the president of Pakistan, who's standing right there. And then we passed it on to Champa, who's my Pakistan Chula icon. And you can see how beautifully women then decorate this. So Champa, this lady here, earns 25 times what she used to earn 5 years ago. And this is over 600 pounds per month as compared to 25 pounds per month that she earned earlier. So this is how she has become a millionaire. And that's how there can be so many millionaires. if they pursue, this kind of path of bazaar. Just wanted to share with you the kind of training that goes on and how these are mendicant communities, beggars in Makli who are being trained. And we trained about 230 of them with the assistance from British Council. And we found that at least 70% rose above the poverty line. And what they're doing is really work in bamboo and earth and lime and terracotta products and so on and so forth. So they're all working with materials that are locally sourced. And then again, another view of how they're being trained. And a lot of women are doing this work. And most of my projects are led by women because I really think that they're the ones who, once you give them a chance, it's amazing what they're able to do. And now we come to Bazaar Tenet number 4, which is non-engineered structures for shrinking the ecological footprint by using green skills and locally sourced materials. And just, again, to just put focus on how we are damaging the earth, especially the ones who are involved in built environment. There's 40% of world energy today being used by the construction industry as it is today. 16% of world's water usage, 3 billion tons of raw material, 15 to 20% of waste stream. And then you can see the horrendous energy requirement for all these products. So I think we have to reflect now as to how we should now limit it. And rather than having this high carbon footprint, now we have to lower it. Even if we don't get to zero carbon, that's all right, but we must lower the carbon footprint and everything. Only then we'll be able to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise that has been ratified recently by COP26, but also it was actually agreed upon in the Paris Agreement in COP15. So then again, just wanted to show you, this is the international model, which is so expensive. I mean, where ours cost maybe 30,000, here is 150,000 rupees. And so you can see that once we build, it's so much cheaper. And then bricks, the kind of damage that the bricks cause, because deforestation of 50,000 acres. This is a consultant of DFID who actually worked this out. If we were to build 100,000 one-room shelters after the floods in 2010. And then this is what I done. And this is 40,000 shelters were built, as you can see, and with IOM, which is International Organization for Migration. And I got a chance because donor fatigue had set in and they did not have enough funds. And that's how they said, okay, let's try this lime thing and whatever it is. That's how I got a chance to build and promote this whole earth building and walls and the masonry, and also bamboo roofs, which were tested every time. So you can see no carbon emissions, no trees were felled, and so on and so forth. This is another example of the same kind of a house again, and another one in which decoration is done by women. And then this is something that I thought I should share with you. This is our prefabricated bamboo panels. That really is very versatile. The panel can be constructed very easily. We are teaching quite a few people in doing this. And as you can see, this is an 8-sided room. It's the octagreen. And then we just, cover it with thatch or any other material that you want. And if you add on another 2 panels, then, it becomes a kind of you can use it as a classroom. And again, if we add on a few more, 4 more panels, then it's like a village center. And now that we make cupolas, which we've learned from working on heritage sites, you can see how it transforms into something much bigger and a much larger kind of space. And you can add verandas and do whatever you want to do with this. And we built one of these in Makli. This is the Interbao Center at Makli, and it's been named after His Royal Highness Prince of Wales, because he's the one who provided support for this work. And he's, of course, very keen proponent of zero carbon work. And then this is built with giant prefab supports, these panels. And this hosted a conference, 2 conferences actually, in 2018 and 19. And this particular one is a huge structure actually, which we use for many purposes. And it's used for, by village people when we are training them, or they are making these products in terracotta. And also, as you can see, it can convert into a conference center, and it's very open. It's only bamboo tracery. It's really zero carbon. There's nothing, no other material used except bamboo or to this scale. Probably one of the largest, it is certainly the largest building of its kind in Pakistan, and maybe very few of this size have been built anywhere in the world. So, and this is, I just want to show the versatility of this, because it's, again, for an urban house, incremental house, we can again use the same panels and it works pretty well. And this is how we, these experts would come for the conference. They are now being taught by local artisans how to work in lime and earth and so on. And then, I want to just show you this, the training videos of Sindh and Malawi. This is on the left is the one that the students at Politecnico di Milano built. This one is built in by rural artisans, and the one on the right is built by a French architect who built an orphanage in Malawi with this. And it's all because of the video tutorials that we developed. And this one is, again, it's in Islamabad, and this is an urban log. And many architects and students participate in this. This is done under the aegis of Institute of Architects, Pakistan. So this is something that we can see that, it can be done quite easily if we teach people how to do. There is a whole lot of video tutorials that we've done. So, because today the levels of homelessness and poverty in almost all countries are alarmingly high. And in Pakistan alone, at least over 1 million impoverished households are without primary facilities of safe shelter, water, sanitation, or clean cooking arrangement. As we do not have any expectation from government or UN and other donor agencies whose siloed Western charity model in any case is not sustainable nor acceptable, I decided that as an architect for the poorest of the poor, I am honor bound to provide easy access to technical guidance to the marginalized for building safe, DRR compliant, that's disaster risk reduction compliant structures themselves. So for this reason, my colleagues and I at Heritage Foundation in Pakistan have worked hard to develop over 24 video tutorials teaching green skills and zero carbon construction. These are open source, graphically illustrated videos that have been uploaded on YouTube as Zero Carbon channel to enable even non-literate households to take up affordable construction using locally sourced sustainable materials. So as you can see, these are low impact techniques allowing a reinterpretation of materials that have been utilized from time immemorial, which are being refashioned today for preventing climate disasters. Many NGOs and households have begun to build by watching step-by-step instructions on their cell phones. In addition, we have begun physical and virtual trainings and monitoring programs for artisans. So once trained, these barefoot entrepreneurs spread the expertise and themselves begin to earn substantial incomes. And so here is just a little video. I'd like to show you how these are rural artisans who've come and how many women are able to also, work on this and learn. Because I'm trying to make it really simple and straightforward, and you can see how. I thought I'll just show you very quickly. They're beginning to read drawings. They're using, tools to be able to cut the bamboo, and women have done an amazing job in doing this. So yeah, it's just. So I will just go forward. And so use the 3 zeros. I would urge you: zero cost, zero carbon, and zero waste for saving the planet and the destitute of the world. Now, I just will try to now stop the share. And so just in conclusion, I believe that the architecture profession will need to become proactive, exploring where the community needs are and finding ways to attract social impact funding and other supporting arrangements for providing design services to fulfill unmet needs of those living on the borders. And this can happen in any country, in all countries. So it will be an arduous route, but the challenges today provide us with exceptional opportunities for mending the existing imbalances and stitching the highly damaged tapestry of our planet. And if we wish to decolonize and democratize architecture, we will need to fashion ways to foster community participation, co-building, and co-creation, a kind of new way of conceptualizing and actualizing our dreams. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmeen, for this fantastic talk. It was so inspiring to see decades of work and of you pioneering this sort of climate justice, really, and talking about participation and engagement in architecture. So thank you so much for that. We'll be taking questions from our audiences, both online and in person. So everyone who is currently in the room in Cambridge, feel free to raise your hand and we'll be passing around a computer. And then for those of you that are online, feel free to just drop this in the chat. And while maybe we give a few seconds to let everyone gather their questions and their thoughts, maybe I can start with a question for you, Yasmeen, in your practice.
Yes.
Have you found that when you talk about engagement and when you talk about learning from local craft and really earthen materials and clay, and especially, you know, when you were talking about lime, all these things are ancestral knowledges, right? That you sort of harness into these technical outputs. So I was wondering, in your engagement with the communities, does that do those learnings happen through making, when you're actually on site and actually finding out about those panels, you know, trying out solutions in their existing context? Or is it beforehand in a sort of more sketch design process or through the discussions you have with them?
It's a very complicated question because, you know, everywhere it's so different. And even in Pakistan, there's so many different areas. The terrain is different, climate is different. And then there's so many disasters. So every time you go there, it's a new disaster. It's a new kind of solution that is needed there. So really, it just depends. You really need to spend a lot of time in understanding. And I always say this, that, you know, you have to go there with a degree of humility, because you cannot go there with already a solution in your mind that you will just impose this and that's it, because it may not happen that way. So, and, you know, because I'd been trained as a proper architect, so I'd never done any work in this way where you go on the site and start innovating right with them, basically. And so it's a lot of times it's trial and error. Like with the chula, I knew that I had to raise it, but I because for the floods, because otherwise it gets washed away. But I didn't realize that nobody wanted to stand up and cook on it. If I raised it, then how would we cook on it? And so then as I looked at them, and we did a couple of them, and it really, you know, I said, well, you can stand and do it. And they said, no, we don't stand and do it. And so that platform, which was a much smaller one, suddenly had to be made much bigger, where people could just sit on them. And then it became very popular because this is how they did. So it's not like you can just design something and say, this is it now, just, you know, carry on and just do it. You have to be prepared to modify it and do, as I said, it is a process of co-building. It is co-creation, you know, it's not a finite design like you do as an architect. You actually have a finite product and say, I want it done this way. And I was like this when I was practicing as an architect. Nobody could touch my building, and there was no way they could make a slightest of change in what I had designed. But, you know, it's now I have to go with a totally different way of looking at things. It's a little bit difficult, yeah, sometimes, but I think you just have to learn to do it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We can see the audience now in Cambridge. I don't know if you can see, we've got a full house.
I can't see them much, actually. I'm sorry, but this is, you know, I feel very lost and alone. I mean, I was talking, I couldn't see anybody, and it's very difficult, yeah.
I've just pinned them. Can you see it now?
I don't know, Lou. I don't seem to. No,
you might need to.
Some, but they're too far away. I mean, yeah, I can see some. Yes, I can see some. Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
So anyone in the audience, if you've got any questions, we can pass it over to you. A silently amazed crowd.
I guess they're finding it very, very different from what they probably expect.
I've got a question. So you spoke about the work you've done in like rural Pakistan. And
say your name first. Sorry, but please, would you tell me your name? Hello.
Oh, sorry.
If you just give us your name first.
So my question was with regards to the work that you have been carrying out in sort of rural Pakistan, and how you draw in the vernacular and all of these building methods, but then also how we know, like for example, in the big cities of Pakistan, there's this drive to create new buildings, big sort of modernist construction. And do you think this is sort of causing a divide between the more rural and small scale buildings and the larger architecture of Pakistan? And how do you think, in what ways can you sort of implement these methods in like larger, more commercial buildings, and like implement like the vernacular or neo vernacular in other settings?
You're quite right. I think I absolutely understand your concern, because a lot of people feel that maybe there's no application in urban areas. And so that's why we've designed something now like the incremental housing, which I think, we are hoping to try it out. And you'd be surprised, and I was actually shocked the other day. We were trying to work something with UN Habitat, and we went to a settlement, because even Karachi has more than 50% of its population in informal settlements. I don't know whether anybody had a chance to ever go to slum areas in countries like mine, and the deprivation level is so high there. This is sometimes even worse than what we find in rural areas. And of course, there are different segments of society living in an urban area close to each other. And the question is, are these applicable to every segment, or are they applicable to only certain group of people? And yes, of course, the rich don't want to live in anything like bamboo. For them, it's total disdain for structures like that. And but I'm not trying to aim for the rich. I think there are just comparatively very few in any case. And the problem today in countries like ours is that everybody wants these very shining multi-story towers, but we know that they are not working anymore. So we really have to just try to change the mindset of everybody, all the people who are in power, all the people who are decision makers. Because unless we do that, we will not be able to reach the solution that I think your generation needs, which is to save the world, basically save the planet, So we have to work out, how do we see that all these people understand the need now to not to build in the same way, the foolish way that we've been doing earlier. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Yasmeen. We've got a question from Rehab Khalid online. So they say, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. You are an inspiration for us all. In my work on urban housing in Lahore, I often find that while the affluent class admires the traditional Havelis of the walled city, they do not necessarily want to live in them. My question is, how can vernacular techniques and structures be made more mainstream in contemporary architecture, and specifically more acceptable for the affluent class?
Yeah. Everybody worries about that, because I think everybody thinks that affluent class needs kind of help, and of course they do, because I think we need to change their mindset. Listen, the problem I think that I feel is that there are not enough architects really working with materials such as bamboo, for instance. And we need really now, and that's why I feel that, you really have to be a very good designer to be using materials like this. So I'm hoping that more young people will veer towards it, and they will design really, whatever structures are needed in an urban setting for the more affluent. And I think they will enjoy living in them, because, finally, once you've done your plaster and everything, lime plaster actually sometimes is even better than cement plaster. So you can, if you want to camouflage bamboo, you can do it that way as well. But, I think architects have to work on this. And I'm not saying that these are the only materials that everybody must use. There are lots of other materials that we must explore and use, which should be suitable for to create really low carbon structures. Because I'm not saying everybody to use exactly this everywhere, not my recipe particularly. But I think everybody who designs now must be conscious that you have to lower the carbon footprint. So why is it that if you have, let's say you have to put up a frame, a reinforced concrete frame for a structure, that internally you can't use material like lime brick and lime mud brick and so on, which will lower the carbon footprint, or bamboo flooring, or I don't know, bamboo partitions. There can be so many things that can be done. So we have to be innovative and start finding solutions, but only architects can do that. That's why I need to get to as many architects as possible. Then we'll be able to change the mindset. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone in person who would like to pick up a following question? I can't see quite well.
I believe not. Sorry. Is there one over there?
name is Michael. Thank you very much for the presentation. I couldn't agree more that architects need to find creative ways to use vernacular materials, even in contemporary buildings and urban buildings. And you stressed how important it is to have a conversation and a relationship with local people to understand their materials and techniques. But that's not always possible as an architect. Often we're contracted to work in places that are far away and we don't have the time to develop that kind of in-person relationship. So are there other ways that we can get to understand what the materials might be that are available and the local traditions?
Yes, it's complicated. It's not that easy to have access to materials. And architects are notorious for not really being adventurous with materials, actually, I'm sorry to say. I think if you give them something that is already been worked out and solution that is available, they can just adapt it and use it. This is what they'd like to do. But exploring new things, doing it, I think is very difficult for them. But I think if you start looking at a practice of architecture in a different way, where every person who you are serving or you are designing for, whether they have that much money as a corporate client or not, is equally important to you. Then you will find a way to spend time to understand what is needed. Now, I really think that as architects, maybe even if you don't go to every place, but there's a lot of material that you can find online or do studies or interact with people remotely even, but design something which they can then implement. I think somehow, I think we have to reach to the communities, and there is a lot of them. So if somehow you can work out a way to be able to understand what their needs are, I think you will design something really valuable. Because architects really, with their imagination, I believe, can do so much more for society than we are doing ourselves right now. I think it's a very limited approach we have right now. And I think we need to expand our horizon somehow. Yeah.
We have a question online from Kashmala Imtiaz. They say, do you have any planned or built projects in Azad Kashmir? How do you think that architects can take into consideration the social cultural landscape of a region, which, as in the case of Kashmir, is so versatile?
Well, the most wonderful thing about Azad Kashmir is really it's beautiful scenery. I mean, just so scenic and so amazing that it just takes your breath away. So first of all, we have to respect that and the mountainous terrain. And that's why it's very important that what you do really somehow fits in with the environment. And this is why concrete and steel are not the right materials. It's got to be natural materials. But again, a lot of wood is used in Kashmir, but wood is no longer available. So really, you have to convert to bamboo. You have no choice. And if you do that, then you can build structures which will blend beautifully into the landscape. But again, you need architects to now focus on this way of looking at things and working at this. Only then we'll find the right solutions. So I don't have a recipe, but things we can do. Of course, I worked in Kashmir as well. Yeah, of course we can design in areas like that. Why should there be a problem? After all, we are all trained to do that, aren't we? Whatever the context might be, we should be able to deal with this. But you just have to do it with a different mindset. We have to keep social and ecological considerations in mind when you design, not just your own ego, right?
Is there any question from the audience? I'm trying to see from online if any hand is raised. All right, I think, we've got someone.
Sorry, we have one question.
Fantastic.
Hello there. Hi.
And so participatory design and building is recently
I can't hear you properly. You have to speak a bit louder.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's becoming really popular in the world elsewhere. And are there any contextual differences in the processes, like the organization itself? And maybe there are some features of this process in Pakistan, for example, or if there are any?
Sorry, Lou, would you like to repeat? Because I couldn't hear properly.
Are there any contextual differences in processes of
processes where between Pakistan and where? Sorry?
Are there any differences in processes of participatory building in Pakistan, for example?
Yes, yeah. Of course, you know, Pakistan is very diverse in terms of its terrain and its climate and everything else. Okay, so you really have to try to see how you respond to the needs. And what I've found is that, for instance, earth is available everywhere, but there are lots of areas like Azad Kashmir where there's, you know, instead of earth, you have a lot of stone available. So whenever you design, you have to see how you can cater for, you know, for whatever the conditions are. And then, you know, this is what we do is to see that, you know, we use the materials that are available. So earth may not be available in many parts. Sometimes also it may be very saline where, you know, we're building. So I found that bamboo really works well in such places. And also there are always local techniques of handling such situations. And you see how you can interpret that and make it, you know, how do you make them really strong so that they're able to withstand disasters. And so every area is different. You'll have to have solutions, different solutions for each one.
And I think we have one last question online from Rehab. And they say, in Pakistan, women remain a minority in the architecture sector. What advice can you give to women working in the field, and how can women gain a stronger footing in the field of architecture?
I'm sorry, who's this talking? You know, do you know that majority of students in most schools today are women? Did you know that? Because my generation was different, yes, of course, but there were few women everywhere. I mean, even in the West, there were very few women. Today, architecture is a very popular subject for women to take up. There's so many female architects, and my female women architects are learning to build bamboo structures. In fact, two of them, along with some from Bangladesh, because there's a British Council program that we are conducting, which is based on all my tutorials, where Bangladesh universities are also going to start to be working on that. And then female students from Pakistan and female students from Bangladesh will go to London, hopefully in March. And then we'll be working with some, you know, female students, hopefully from the UK, and build this bamboo log, for instance, somewhere in London, you know. So, and it'll be women who will be doing it. So I can assure you there are lots of women now in the field, in the field of architecture. I think I probably set a good example, maybe, you know, I don't know, but it's happened. This is what I keep on hoping, that maybe that's the reason, but there are lots of women now, and they will make no mistake, soon, you know, they'll be the ones who'll be really the ones that will be more prominent. Once somebody gives them a chance, that's very important. Women are not getting the chance that they need. Yeah, sorry, yes, Lou?
Rehab just added that they were mentioning students, not practitioners. She said that practitioners are still majority men. So it might be referring to an older generation that maybe was majority of men.
Yes, that's probably true, because they were there in majority. So I mean, they're still all, so many of them are alive. Like, I mean, I'm still alive because I'm so old. But the fact is, there'll be more women hopefully very soon. And the issue with women always is that society is not supportive of their working. So when they graduate, they're not all able to come into the workforce, but it's true all over the world. So I think the world has to change their attitude towards women to allow them to be able to be productive. And this is true for anywhere in the world, actually, not only in Pakistan. And we have to fight for that, okay? We have to fight to bring about, you know, gender parity.
Is this maybe to go back to Rehab's question? What kind of opportunities do you feel need to be given for women to be given that chance of practice more equitably? Does that happen at the beginning in architecture school, in doing workshops like the one where you're doing with your students and taking them to see other practitioners? What kind of work do you think could be done regarding that?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's something that we have to really now think very, very deeply about as to what we do for women to encourage them or provide them the facilities that they're able to be productive. And as I said, society has to be more supportive. For instance, a lot of women, after they get married, they are not encouraged to work. And so they're told just to sit at home. But why is it that women can't also work from home, actually? You know, I mean, now with this remote workplaces, it is possible to do it. And I really think, again, if you look at the majority, I'm trying to work on this actually as to how we can create a network of women, of female architects who have to be or forced to stay at home, but who can really interact with communities and provide them the assistance they need. Because a lot of times it's to improve people's lives, they just need very little advice and guidance, and that can just improve their life enormously. So I think architects with their design sense and the training they've had, I think they fit well into the role. And somehow we can create a network of women who are able to provide help to other women in rural areas or urban slums or wherever. I think there would be huge potential. And if they could be compensated through corporate sector funding or something, I think this is something we have to work on. And I'm sure that we can, they make a huge difference in getting to people who really need their services. But, again, it's a whole changing the way you practice architecture. It can't be done in the way that we are doing today, right? And then, of course, we'll have many more opportunities. Yeah.
Yasmeen, thank you so much for your talk. It was deeply inspiring, and I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat as well, just thanking you and saying you are a true inspiration. Hope there are many more successes in the future. So it's great to have you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
For all of you who have joined us, we just wanted to quickly share with you the time cards for the one remaining workshop we have. So I'll just share my screen and let Kieran take over.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Thank you. You did a grand job of moderating, so that is good.
Hello. Yeah, just a quick thank you from me as well, from the in-person group, for delivering such a insightful and inspiring close to our Unfold series for this term. For everyone who's joining us in person and online, thank you to you too for coming. And we hope that you've enjoyed this series, and we look forward to seeing you at more of our events. Speaking of which, we have one more event for this term, which is a workshop number 3 on the 23rd of November, which will be a drop-in to discuss our action groups and further research sharing and knowledge production and collaboration. We would also like to draw attention to something quite exciting, which is that you can now view our recordings, finally, for any talks that you've missed. They will be on our website, which is on the, usually linked into the bottom of our emails, but we'll send another email out tomorrow so you can access them. So thank you again, all of you, for joining us, and we wish you a pleasant evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Yasmeen.